All right, we're live.
Here we are.
Hey everyone. Okay, this is I'm Emily Talvik. I'm the founder of Best Next Steps, and this is Afternoons with Ems. Best Next Steps is based on the thought process that we get stuck a lot of times in our life, and what would it mean if we went through a process of just taking our best next steps in each of those areas and setting ourselves free from the things that are holding us back. And so to talk about freedom today is one of my dear friends, Angela Barnes, who started a business called Boot and Borrow, and it's a lifestyle blog, and it is just, I mean, if you want to be inspired, go take a look at her on Instagram. It's so good. There's so much there. But she took a little hiatus. You've taken a small hiatus. So,
yes.
Okay, for everyone out there who doesn't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. And
Well, I think probably when you're a mom, don't you always just introduce yourself by, hi, my name is Angela Barnes, and I'm a mother of 3 kids.
Yes.
My kids are a notch older than yours. So my kids are 21, 19, 17. So we're in the thick of that tail end of getting kids launched and into the world. We'll be in our last school year with our oldest next year, which is crazy. I can't even believe I'm 1 year away from being an empty nester. Doesn't seem real. But my life and passion has always been women and helping women, coming alongside women. I've worked in and out of ministry through the years, mentoring and teaching women on everything from how to organize your kitchen to heart stuff. I mean, really women getting free and women growing and learning and becoming better moms and wives and just women in general. And so that's really been my heart passion for the last 20 years. And it's taken many forms. I think the most recent form is Boot and Borrow. Although this has been like cray year for me.
She's had a year. You know, when you just have it, it's not like you don't have a day, you have a year. She's had a year of a lot of things.
Yes.
So, but some really good things. So talk about the house, the bills.
Good things. My middle daughter was a senior this year. We are in the middle of building our dream house, which is a blessing upon blessing. But
you all wait. You just need to just get your hearts ready for what is going to happen when she is in that house and settled, and then Boot and Borrow. She has some new material.
Yes, I will. Hopefully, yes. But yeah, it's just been way more consuming than I ever dreamed it would have been. And
I did try to warn you.
I know.
You did. I built last year, and not even on the scale that she did, but I did try to, we kind of custom to spec home. Well, she's customing a custom home. So I knew how consuming my build was, and I wasn't even creating things from scratch. And so I tried, but nothing can really prepare you for the amount of.
It's kind of like when you're having your first baby and people warn you, but you just are like, no, I'll be different.
Yeah, you really don't think those underpants will be that big.
No.
But people tell you about the big underpants when you're having your firstborn, and then they hand them to you in the hospital, and you're like,
those are big.
So that's a different thing. Yeah. It's like that.
Yeah, so it was a perfect storm year for me, some personal things going on. So honestly, since I haven't posted on Boot and Borrow since Christmas. I mean, that's just being real, which is heartbreaking to me because it really is a passion of mine, but it just had to take a backseat to real life and kids and building and all the crazies of life. But I am looking at rebooting Boot and Borrow. So Boot and Borrow, the whole thing is what to kick and what to keep in your life. And I'm just a firm believer in collecting information as we go through this life of ours, gathering and borrowing wisdom and knowledge from friends and books and teaching. And I don't think there's anything new under the moon. I think it's just a matter of opening yourself up to learning how to do something different or better. And so that's what Boot and Borrow is about. So hopefully come fall, or maybe even this summer.
Oh yeah.
I hope this summer I can get back in my groove.
But the content you already have on there is gorgeous. And
thank you.
So here's just, if I can give you a little tip about anything, it is to have friends that walk a few paces ahead of you with their children, so that when your kid does something, you can say, did your child ever do this? And they're like, oh yeah, totally normal. You just someone else that is just that far enough in front of you that can help you out when it's the first time your kiddo's done something. And then also, I think when you can make your mentors your friends, that really becomes super special. And Angela first started, I met her, our kids were at the same school, and we have kind of a whole long story of how we met, but she was someone who really was...
Nobody got no time for that today.
No, we're not. That's more of like a glass of wine type of conversation, but she was someone who was in a position of leadership at our church, and I was really watching her and just absorbing the things she said, and then she's just become a dear friend. And I think when your mentors can become your friends, then you just, it's the best of both worlds. And we do our cooking group together. So you guys have heard me talk about bulk cooking or batch cooking. I heard that the new way to say it is batch cooking.
I like that.
I do too.
I like that.
And maybe no woman likes the word bulk. So let's just be honest. Like no one really wants to use that. So it's batch cooking. We're doing batch cooking.
Yes, I like that. And we've had lots of really good conversations while prepping food for our families and our crazy lifestyle. And it's been a huge blessing in my life. I tell people all the time, do this thing with your girlfriends. It is
amazing. We solve the world's problems, or at least our own.
Yeah, we try.
We sort our husbands out, we're kids, ourselves. We're here for all of it. So that has just been. I mean, obviously, you guys can tell she's just really a blessing in my life, and I'm so excited to have her here today because you guys are going to get the wisdom that I've absorbed all these years. So I asked her if she could come on today, and I said, let's talk about traditions. And she goes, no, I don't want to talk about traditions. I want to talk about freedom. And I was like, oh, well, actually, that's pretty appropriate in light of the 4th of July. Yeah. Did you see? I showed up for you all today in my patriotic colors. But
I guess I've got the white. I've got one of the colors.
Yeah, you're the white. We're good. It's, so in light of 4th of July, we're going to dive into freedom. And so, okay, you suggest this topic to me. Tell me why it's been on your heart lately and what.
Well, you said you wanted a 4th of July topic.
I know.
Instantly I went into my little Rolodex of all the symbolic words of the 4th of July. But specifically, I think the topic of freedom has been kind of right at the top of my mind and heart these days. Without devolving too far into a lot of stories, I just happen to be in a place in my life where 3 or 4 pretty significant situations are playing out in our personal lives with close friends, a couple of family members, all separate situations, but they all have a very common theme to them. And so it's been a very heartbreaking place to be in when you're coming alongside the people you love and you're watching relational fallout, you're watching lives be hurt and set back. And one of the common themes that my husband and I have kind of pieced together through some of these situations is just in all of these situations, there was a place in a person's life in each of these relational situations where there had been bondage, for lack of a better word, or unhealth, or behaviors that had been left to get entrenched into their life to the point at which by the time it came out or came to light, it just had created a lot of relational havoc and a lot of injury and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And now watching them try to piece back together, I guess the consequence of that, and just I guess the heartbreak for us is knowing had this issue been addressed earlier in their life, there still would have been a consequence to working through it, like there always is when we address these hard things in our life. It's not easy. It never is easy. No. At any age, it's not easy. But the longer something is allowed to fester and take root in our life, the more painful it is when it finally is rooted out or comes to light or whatever form that takes. And so that part has just been this theme in our home, having conversations with our kids even. It's like providing an opportunity to have these even conversations in our marriage and with my children of where are these potential things in our life that might need to be addressed. We don't want to see you get into your marriage and have there be an issue that could have been dealt with right now at age 17. So that's why this has been on my heart lately.
Well, and I think some of these issues that bind us they start in our youth, and we carry them. We drag. It's like Ebenezer Scrooge. Is that what? No, Marley.
Oh,
like
with the
Marley
chains.
dragging those chains. I mean, we drag them through our whole adult life, and I don't think we become so accustomed to their weight that I don't think we always realize how heavy they are and what it would feel like to be on the other side.
I agree. And I think sometimes if they start early enough in our life, sometimes they're the chains of our upbringing, like even just our home life. They were our parents' chains, and so we just kind of got some of them on ourselves, and we don't even know they're chains because they feel normal to us. Yeah. They're our norm. Like we don't even know that life could be different or should be different. And I think that's actually the harder part, when you don't even see them as chains.
I heard this little quote the other day: "When dysfunction is your function."
That's good.
And I was like, "Oh, that like we should all have that on T-shirts."
It's like the Schoolhouse Rock conjunction.
Yes, totally. Dysfunction is your function. When you get so used to functioning in dysfunction that you don't know what it would be like to not have to do things that way. Because I feel like when we are functioning in dysfunction and doing like quirky things because of what binds us, it's always a harder route. Yes. It seems like a shortcut, but we're always taking the hardest way. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, why do you think that is? Why do you think people have such a hard time stepping into the concept of freedom? And like, I think we choose our chains. We choose the security of the hard place.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple reasons. I know one, personally, I mean, I can speak from my own experience. I think sometimes it's fear. I think as painful as some of our issues might be in our life, and the extra weight it creates, or the drag it creates in our life, sometimes the familiar is better than what might be required of you. I think there is just always this fear of the unknown with humans. I think it's part of our human condition. It's like, even though this might be hard and bad, I've learned to manage it. I've learned to deal with it. And the fear of what would be required of me? What would be required of me to lay that down, or to talk about that, or to bring it into the light, or to risk being vulnerable, to risk shame or guilt? I think there's just a lot of fear around how someone might react if you were honest. I know one of the big things in our home is trying to create a shame-free environment for our kids to actually admit that they're struggling with something. Because it's like, we all want the people in our life to love us and to think the best of us. And sometimes to admit, I'm medicating in this way, or this anger issue it goes far deeper than I'm willing to admit. I'm raging on the inside. I mean, it can come out in so many different ways, but I think fear of how people will react, how we'll be accepted, what might be required if I actually admit this is a real problem. I don't know. That's some of what I would think, at least the things that went through my head when faced with laying some of my own things down.
I want to do that.
No.
It feels so. Last week I had Nicole Mischke on, and she walked through 10 years of bulimia. And then she talked about how just the shame of anyone ever finding out held her. Like, she never thought she would get better, because if people found this out about her, it was just that was too hard, until she had some health scares and physically couldn't, she needed to change. And I think so often shame is the largest chain that binds us.
Absolutely.
From stepping into freedom. And I think it's exact opposite of what God would want for us. The biggest chain breaker of them all would want something so different for us. And we can circle back to this, but I just want to see what you think. I've seen kind of some of the long-term consequences in my own life of the chains I was more comfortable carrying than letting them go. But what do you think are the long-term effects of hanging on to our shame, the staying in this bondage of pain addiction, jealousy. I mean, I don't know.
I know. I mean, the list is endless.
Over shopping. Like, I think, do you guys, I don't know, years ago, Oprah had this gal on who her and her husband were like, they looked like they were millionaires, and they lived in this huge house. I think it was like in Bel Air or something. But then her kids had like 3 pieces of clothes in their closet, and they were in massive debt. She was spending like crazy, like huge shopping sprees. And was it Susie? Who was the
Susie Orman?
Or yes, was like, you gotta get a job at Starbucks. It's always stuck with me, like the shame of her not, like she was just, that's how she dealt with whatever other stresses. She was like this. I'm like, it would took shopping. Like, what do you do? You're why I can't think of the word when you're spending to like stress shopping or whatever. It like took it to a whole new level.
A shopaholic.
A shopaholic, yeah. It took it to a whole new level. Anyway, that's a side note. But you know, there's a few Oprah episodes that like really stick out to you, and that was one of them where I was like, what in the world? Yeah.
So I lost your question.
You let down the story.
No, I was like so engrossed in your story, I completely lost the question. What are some of the long-term impacts? Oh my gosh, I think there's so many. I always, it's not mine. I've stolen it from someone along the way, but I can't remember who to give them credit. But I always get that imagery of how when you're holding on to one thing, you can't hold 2 objects in your hand at the same time. And so when you're having to hold and carry whatever this thing is in your life, this chain, it doesn't allow you to have a free hand to reach out and grab something better. And so I think, and that can take so many, can take effect in so many ways. I mean, I think limiting beliefs. I mean, if that's, personal bondage, like for me, was one of my big things. I had such a performance mentality and a fear of rejection that drove all of my early years way into my 20s. And I don't think I was really free from that chain till I was 36 years old. And now when I look back in retrospect of all the things that I missed out on and the things I didn't reach out and grab or go for, always for fear of rejection, how many relationships I limited, how many people I kept at bay that I wasn't really intimate with, that I was never vulnerable. I shortcutted friendships. I shortcutted opportunities because I was afraid if I stepped out and tried that thing and failed, it would somehow massacre my identity. And I mean, I just have a lot of regret now when I look back. And I think what happens, at least I can speak for me, what I have done in the past with these mindsets that don't serve me or bad behaviors that don't serve me is that I'm always looking for the justification or the excuse to why I'm doing this thing or why I struggle with this mentality. And so as I go through my life, all I'm doing is collecting evidence to support this belief that isn't serving me. And so, you go through life and someone says something a certain way or somebody does something a certain way or there's a circumstance that happens and all it does is just like well, this just must be who I am, or this just is how life is, or it's just, I always think of an attorney building a case. So I'm just looking for evidence to continually build my case. And at some point, the weight of the case that you've built against yourself or life or the world or people or men or whatever it comes out as, for me at least, there does reach a crossroads where you're being offered a different kind of life, or you just keep on this road of building a case and all the things you're going to give up building your case. And for me, I was fortunate enough that I kind of had a breaking point. I went through a divorce, and quite frankly, every worst fear I ever had about myself, every insecurity, every fear of rejection, actually happened. It actually became this self-fulfilling prophecy that I was living out my worst nightmare. And yet it was an invitation. It really was the beginning of me being free, because for the first time, the very worst thing that I had feared in my whole life really was happening. And
it wasn't something you could really keep private either, because everyone knew you were going through a divorce. So it wasn't like you could, there comes a point where you have to say, oh, I'm not married anymore. You know,
right.
when you build up this image of what a successful adult
Yes.
looks like, it looks like married and happy family,
Yes.
and you know, that sort of thing. And there comes a point where you have to, it's been laid bare, really. And
yes, and for me it was super public. We were in leadership in church.
Yeah.
We had to step down. It's all the things, all
and
the
and
embarrassment.
your security was stripped away
my
really
goodness.
quickly.
I mean, financial security, emotionally, I felt really laid bare. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. And yet, in the middle of my worst nightmare, really God met me. And it was a real invitation for the first time in my adult life to reckon with these chains of my own insecurities, my own fear of rejection, and for the first time in my life, uncouple my identity from other people and really solely root it in my relationship with God and get free from that. And so, you know, I think sometimes these bad or hard circumstances in our life that we spend a lot of time avoiding, we spend a lot of energy being, you know, to remain happy and peaceful and life is good and all of that. But if we are willing to open up ourselves to these crucifixion moments in our life, a lot of time there's an invitation from God in them to be free in a new area of our life if we're willing to see it that way.
Well, and I think God really, one of the things that he did through that process was equip you to very gently and lovingly walk other people through that as well. Not just divorce, but so I met her at a time when probably one of my biggest chains has been self-sabotage and fear of failure. So those two working in conjunction means that I will like get really close to finishing a project but never finish it because if I don't finish it, then I can never say that I failed at it, and then I self-sabotage any effort I might have at success. So
sorry, I've done that too, so that's why I'm chuckling. You're in good company.
She and then along with that, I think I was someone, because I have had so much trauma in my background, just felt like, well, I am carrying the weight of this trauma. And I think at some point through our friendship, well, she put me in a position of leadership for a pretty big, event at our church every month. So
Which she did amazing at, by the way.
Yeah, well, sometimes she had to like, sister, like, get a move on. And I think it was those loving, hard conversations of like, I know you've got this, you can do this and do it well, in my self-sabotaging moments, that really helped me. I feel like I did complete that well. Like when it was done, I handed it over well. It was good. We worked great together, but it was during I was in a hard season of my health, and I think just there hits a point in your adult life where you're healing from some traumas of your childhood. You're dealing with the traumas of adulthood that have happened along the way too, and just raising kids. And I feel like you were so able to say, like, okay, let's go, let's work through some of these things and then let go of them. Like, you don't need to keep carrying them around, in a way that I was able to hear. And I feel like it just helped me step into gain this forward trajectory in my life. You were one of the main people that spoke that over me and really helped. And I felt like I had been praying specifically for God to give me a friend that could kind of lift me out, and you didn't necessarily lift me out, but I felt like the words you spoke over me were the tools I needed in order to really gain the traction I needed. Because in the end, no one can do the work for you.
No, they can't.
But someone can keep speaking enough truth over you and believing in you to help you believe in yourself and kind of really change the patterns. And you've kind of seen me walk through a pretty dramatic change in a lot of areas in the last 5 years.
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, sometimes you asked earlier, what are some of the things that keep us, you know, from facing it? I think, you know, I said fear, but honestly, I think sometimes it's just plain ignorance. I think sometimes we don't even see them. And so one of the things I've done in my life, and I so appreciate when I see this quality in other people, it always draws my affection toward them. And it's one of the things I saw from you from day one is a humility to learn and to grow and to do better. And sometimes that takes that really scary thing of asking another person to speak into your life and to my husband calls it like doing a 360, you know, where you invite people into your life to say, I can only see this part of me. I can't see the side, I can't see the back, but I trust that there's people in my life that see the parts of me that I can't see. And and I don't say just do that willy-nilly with anybody. I think there's some wisdom that comes from who you invite into that role to speak into your life and to give permission to say, hey, am I not seeing something? Because sometimes I think we see this common thread in our life, like this reoccurring theme, and we're not always savvy enough to see that the common denominator is ourself, or we might know it's ourself, but we can't even put the pieces together as to what we might be doing that's causing this self-sabotage in this one area of our life. And so, trusted friends, counseling. I mean, I'm a huge believer in counseling and getting in there and doing the work.
That's why we're here today, all the therapy.
All the therapy, but honestly, I've spent years in counseling, but there is nothing better than a good girlfriend, a trusted, wise girlfriend that you give honest permission to speak into your life and say, hey, you got broccoli between your teeth. You need some friends in your life that you give permission to do that and be that in your life. And so, because I think a lot of times we're just inadvertently bound. I don't know that we even know that sometimes
how tied up we are.
We're letting people down in this way, or we're shortcutting ourselves in this way, or like in your case, I think you didn't even see some of the potential that you legitimately had and were kind of, like you said, in that self-sabotaging mindset. And
well, I was heavy. I was dragging all that stuff around all the time because I started. That was exhausting. It was wearing me out. One of the things you said to me, and I don't even know if you remember this, but I wrote it in my journal, and I have written it since, is you said, no one is denying that you have walked through a lot of hard things, but you're still carrying them as if they happened yesterday. And I was I
don't remember saying that, but I can't.
No, it was good. It was good. It was so good because I think I was always looking for people to say, like, to validate my trauma, and that if people validated it, then okay, right. See, that's why I can't gain any momentum because I have all this trauma. But you loved me enough to say, no one denies that you have had these things happen to you, and those are really hard. But there is more for you than your past. And I think that I just feel like when I really process that, and I'm a pushbacker, so like someone will say something to me, and I'm like, no, and then I go home and I'm like, oh, they were right. Like, and I have to process, and then I usually come back, right? And then I'm like, I heard what you said. I really thought about it a lot. And now that I've calmed I am a redhead, so like now that I've calmed myself right on down, I can hear it, and I am a marinator. I do think over people that I really trust. People are.
I think it's a rare soul that can get hard feedback and just process it in the moment perfectly. I think most of us have to go away, lick our wounds a little bit, process, trust the Lord with it to reveal the truth. And sometimes things have been packaged to me. I've gotten feedback that wasn't packaged very nicely. Sometimes it's not even coming from a place of love. It's coming from a moment of hurt or frustration in the other person. And even in that, the older I get, the better I'm hoping to become at, even in those moments when it's not even delivered in love, to still walk away and still ask God to reveal to me, is there some truth in that? Despite their bad delivery, despite the anger behind what they said, is there a place of freedom that I need to have in this situation? But I've always marveled at your ability to process and to come back in humility and to continue the dialogue. I think it shows so much about your character and your desire to grow and to learn and to be better and all the aspects of your life. I've always admired that about you.
I think that's Jesus.
Yeah, well,
It's just,
all the good stuff is Jesus, isn't it?
And I think when you pray specifically for him to put people in your life, and then he does, it's not going to always be cotton candy. Mm-hmm. It's not, if those friends that really love you, those people, those mentoring people in your life that you trust enough to open up to, then you have to trust enough that they're going to lovingly help steer your ship.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always feel good. Course correction rarely feels good.
No.
In the moment.
Hardly ever.
I don't know.
Ever?
I don't know. Yeah.
Never in my life has it felt good. It feels gut-wrenching because it usually requires something hard from us. Yes. It requires us laying down our pride or our excuses and if there are things that we've done from childhood, those excuses are entrenched, and
we're justified in them.
Yeah, we are.
We do. I mean, we feel so strongly that the reasons we do them, there's like, that is the right way to go. Right. That is the right way to be. We are reacting the right way. We are holding on to that anger for the right reasons. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think it's funny because I think these. I can't think of a better word, chains or whatever we're talking about here. I think, sometimes they come from other people. They come from circumstances like, in my case, like I went through a bad divorce or, and I can attribute this attitude or this emotion or bad behavior in my life to that event. And then so it's like things done to us, like, my mom was abusive or overly critical or whatever those circumstances are. And then sometimes they're self-imposed. Sometimes they're actually legitimate choices we've made in our life, mistakes we've made, sin we've willingly entered into, or and I think each of those has, at least in my life, the ones that I've created or the ones that were imposed upon me by circumstance, they each have their own pros and cons to undoing them, because I think sometimes the ones that we put on, like we kind of like that whole adage, like you made your bed, now lie in it. We've all made our bed. We've all done and said things in our life that created, not great result, or, we went down a trail of coping or medicating maybe in some way that we knew when we had that first little, I shouldn't do this. And then you keep going. I think sometimes the hardest part about that is the shame piece,
yes.
When it was a self-imposed, at least for me. And then the ones that come from my childhood, I feel like the hardest part is the excuse, like really the willingness to lay down the excuse of, no one's denying that this aspect of my upbringing created the perfect environment for me to start behaving in this way or coping in this way. But if I want a different kind of life for myself and a different kind of life for my children and not pass that on to them, then at some point I have to be willing to face those excuses. And that is the hard part. That is so hard.
And I think when it's childhood trauma, we don't realize at the time that what we're doing to survive those circumstances then later becomes change. And I 100% believe that you, in the midst of trauma, you may create bad habits or bad patterns or whatever because you're trying to survive it.
Absolutely.
And that you do what you need to do. Like in those moments, I 100% believe you do what you need to do. You survive however you survive. But there will come a point in your adult life. And I even remember, like, the one that comes to mind is when I was digging deep with a counselor through the sexual abuse that happened to me when I was a child. And she said, okay, we need to go through each time and you need to say what happened. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And she goes, you need to get it out of your head and physically out of your body so it doesn't live there anymore. And you don't keep creating bad habits around the abuse, because every time you're gonna get close to physical intimacy, or every time something feels scary to you, you're gonna start doing all of the things that you did then to keep yourself safe, all of those shortcuts. So that, like, at the time, those were what I did, but now as an adult, they're just, they were becoming chains. It was becoming chains. And so, and there's all sorts of different situations like that. Like you feel stressed, so you start overeating, or you are angry about a conversation you had with your husband and you yell at the kids. Like, we all have triggers in our life that make us choose a negative reaction, but it feels safe. It feels like an outlet, and it's finding the freedom to have better outlets, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And there's a reason why, if you look at most addiction programs or 10-step programs, that the first step is admitting there's a problem. Because there is just something so powerful in just the admission, just like your counselor made you actually verbalize what had happened. Because, and I don't have the scripture reference in front of me, but the Bible talks about things that are kept in the dark, or the things that are kept in secret, and what the enemy,
I feel like it's Romans,
leverages that against us. And there is such power in just working up enough courage and finding that safe person, whether that's a counselor or a trusted friend or your spouse or whoever that is, finding at least one trusted person that you actually would have the courage to say it out loud, like to really confess, this is a thing that I struggle with. This is a thing that I'm in secret trying to manage and cope with. And I've, at least in my life, there's been a couple times when just the act of bringing it into the light took care of 90% of it. It was something about just the physical act of admitting this was going on that provided enough accountability and awareness in my own life, and trusting someone with it, that, and then others have been harder. Some have, some chains are easier to break than others, but I think in every case, we have this temptation to fix things in secret. Like, I'll just go over here and get my crap together.
No one will
and
ever
then
know.
I'll emerge this beautiful butterfly, and no one will know. No one will have to actually witness the metamorphosis. I'll just do it in secret. Somehow I'll cope and manage and fix myself in secret. And it just doesn't work that way. God never intended us to do it that way. He intended us to be in community and to trust and to lean into one another. The Bible talks about the parts of the body, the body of the church, and we need each other. He meant for us to not try to fix ourselves all by ourselves. And but it does take risking that, bringing it into the light, and involving someone in the process of our freedom and getting free. And then what's cool about it is that then when you do break free, you actually have people in your corner cheering you on and celebrating the victory of your freedom. It's like, I don't know, that has been one of the most amazing parts of working with women through the years. Is actually, it's such an honor that someone involve you in the process of their life, in the process of their parenting or them getting healthy or whole, that you actually get to participate and to witness a miracle in action. And then you get to celebrate with one another and cheer one another on. It's like, I can't even imagine going through the stuff I've gone through in my adult life and the freedom journey I've been on doing it by myself. I can't even fathom. I've been so blessed to have friends that I've trusted and have walked this journey with me and saw me at my worst and saw me in all the points along the way where it wasn't pretty and I was angry and I was self-righteous or I was prideful or I was frustrated at my own inability to get out of my own rut. But they made all the difference. They made it possible when I wanted to give up to not give up. And it always pains me when I see women trying to do this work on their own.
Well, and I don't know that you can ever totally heal in a vacuum.
No.
I think unless you bring someone into someone else into your whatever feels like shame, whatever chain is holding you back, I think that then you really heal, because if not, then you always have that secret.
Yeah. And there's always that, I don't know about you, but at times in my life when I was secretly dealing with my own issues and I hadn't gotten to a place where I felt comfortable involving people in my freedom process, I always felt like a fraud. I always walked around feeling like, if they only knew. If they only knew what I was thinking, if they only knew how I felt, if they only knew what went through my head and the things I struggle with, they wouldn't love me. And so even when you do have your act together, in some weird way, it's still heavy because you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. You're just waiting for someone to see the mask slip a little. And it puts such a pressure on your female friendships because then you're always feeling like you have to put your best foot forward to secure their friendship or their affection or their love or their loyalty. And I sabotaged so many female friendships in my early 20s and even into my 30s. I just look back and I think I could have been such a better friend had I been willing to be vulnerable with my own crap, because then I wouldn't have felt this need to always be performing, always have my act together. I could have been free to let them see me in my not so pretty state, and they would have been more apt to let me see them in their not so pretty state, and we could have worked through this together. But I think women have this habit sometimes of thinking they have to have their act together, and you feel like a fraud. And I don't know.
We're both recovering perfectionists. So mine was to a point where if my house was not put together, people were not coming over. Now I'm like, the house is a mess. Come on over. I picked up some pizzas. Like, if I didn't have the perfectly laid dinner, we were not having dinner guests. I did not ever feel the freedom to just have a loose flow. I don't know. I think the older your kids get, though, that helps with that, because they're just bringing their friends over regardless.
It's a revolving door.
And then their parents are coming over to pick them up and whatever. So I think that does help. But I think we've relaxed with our perfectionism. But I think about times like being a complete emotional mess, but pulling off throwing a Pinterest perfect birthday party for my kids. And like, what in the what? Like, what? Those things do not connect. Like, I cannot get myself together, but I can spend hours crafting and make, these montages of these gorgeous birthday parties. And I don't think it was, I love my kids more than anything, but I don't know that came from a place of love. It came from a place of, yes, a place of love, but a place of performance.
I know what you're saying.
Yes.
Like that, it's the motive behind what you're doing. It's
right. Was it to impress and to show that I had my act together because inside I was a mess? Or was it really because I thought my daughter needed to have our house look like a Lala Loopsy house? Like the inside of a Lala. Like, I can't even tell you the things I've done in the past. And
oh my goodness.
But don't you think when you're living that way, you feel frantic on the inside all the time? There's a franticness to what you're doing because you can't let your guard down.
No.
You can't, there can be no cracks in this veneer. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a horrible feeling.
It is.
It's a horrible feeling, and it really, for me, it escalated, and all of that came crashing down in my divorce. That was kind of like the fairy tale, the gig is up,
Yes.
And that was when I say there was a gift in that for me, because at that point there was no more facade. It was like, no, my life is in shambles. It may have looked like Pinterest yesterday, and now it just looks like crap. And but that was a little bit of the gift, because there was no striving anymore. There was no even attempting to make it look like it's something it wasn't. And so for me personally, that was the invitation to say, okay, that's the exterior of my life now has been laid bare. Now it's time to lay bare the interior of my life, and be willing to say, the shambles that are on the outside, actually there's parts of my life that are feeling that way on the inside, and I'm willing to kind of just let everybody see that too.
And if you spent any time with Angela at all, she does do so many things beautifully. She entertains it seems effortlessly. I think you've developed a lot of tips and tricks over the years.
It's called hacks.
Yeah, she's developed a lot of hacks, but I feel like becoming friends with her was also a way to, the goal was she never does it so you feel like the goal is perfection. She does it because she wants to create a beautiful space for the people that she loves. Like, you do that so well. You give everyone the gift of a beautiful dinner or a wonderful night on your back patio because you love your friends. And that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like a performance. And I think for me, I was feeling that genuine, like, oh, this is just about enjoying each other. We all love beautiful food. We all love a great cocktail. Like, we love time together. And I'm going to do this as a gift. And that's, I think, where your your love of decor and creating beautiful spaces comes because it's a gift you want to give to the people in your world.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I really resonate with your whole Pinterest story, because I do look back at years in my life where I still enjoyed it. It was still a hobby and a passion, and reading cookbooks and watching all the shows. I love all that. But I will say my motive, there was a motive of fear in some of that, of trying to pull it off, and there being an element of performance in it. Not meaning to. Like, my heart was always to serve and to love through my home. But it's funny how you can just be 1 degree off in your motive and it changes everything. And I think the healthier I've become as a woman, and just with age, and quite frankly, there is a gift in aging that you just don't care as much about the stupid stuff.
Well, I think you just get so busy with your big kids and their big kid life that you don't have the time to devote. No one's there's no nap time anymore to get things done. Like, everyone is busy, and so you just don't have time to craft all these things from scratch anymore. And you start looking, that's why Etsy's so fabulous. You can just order a lot of that stuff online now. Looks like you made it.
Oh my goodness. So I appreciate you saying that, because I do feel like
you have it.
Well,
really has.
And I feel like that's part of my own healing, as I do know now when I do those things, it even feels different for me.
Yeah.
I don't feel the striving. I'm like you. It's like, if I have the time and the energy to kind of go all out, and great, and if I don't, it's still just about the people and us providing an opportunity to be together. But I've seen it play out differently in my life in my earlier years, for sure, and I know that frantic feeling that you're talking about, and that's
not I don't think that's ever from God.
No.
And that's never operating from a place of joy. Mm-mm. So, okay, we should wrap it up, but so 2 more questions. What would you say to someone who is on the other side of this, who is got all of their things, they're holding them so tight in the dark, and they might be listening to us today like, I don't think I could ever do that. I don't even know how to, what's that first step?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably just repeat what I said earlier. I think the first step for me would be admission. And if it feels like too big of a step to involve another person in that admission, maybe the first step for you is just to find some quiet space in your week this week to just sit in a very honest place with yourself and journal that admission on paper. And maybe that could be the first step of just admitting this thing that I struggle with, or this weight I've been carrying since my childhood, or this destructive behavior pattern or attitude or mindset. I'm admitting today it's costing me something.
Yeah.
It's costing me an area of thriving in my life. It's costing me friendships. It's costing me a better marriage, in my parenting, whatever it is. Maybe start with just acknowledging it to yourself. And then from there, I would really say, if you don't feel like you have the kind of friendship that Emily and I are describing, where you have a trusted friend that you feel like you could run that thing by and get some feedback or some encouragement, I would encourage you find a counselor. And I will say this about counseling, just my little stump speech on counseling. I think finding the right counselor can sometimes be hard. It's a process. So don't be frustrated if you go to 1 or 2 counselors and you're like, this counseling thing is not for me.
No.
It is. No. Is that your experience? It takes time to find the right person.
I recently, my one that I've seen for a long time moved away, and I feel like it took me a good 3 or 4 trying different people on, and one I knew within 20 minutes, and I was like, thank you for your time. I'm sure you're great. I don't think you're for me. And like, here's your check. I just walked out because if the chemistry isn't there, if the vibe isn't there, if you don't feel like this is the best thing you can give yourself, is a counselor where you don't care what they think about you, and you feel like you could say anything to them. You are paying them not to like you. You are paying them to help you.
Yes.
And so you need to be able to feel like you're not trying to impress them. This is not another person who's going to become your best friend. I mean, this is a person that you're paying a check to help you sort yourself out. And so I think if it doesn't feel right from the get-go, or you feel like you're intimidated by them, then that is not the right counselor.
No. And then I think my third tip would just be, real change And when we're talking about breaking chains, whatever that is, like we've already said multiple times today, that is not easy. That is
you can't
hard.
flip that switch.
No, and it takes a high level of intentionality, and that's why involving another person helps, because it creates a little bit of a attraction and an accountability and a dialogue that you can't run from. But I would say my third tip would be, really dig in. I mean, the world, we're just living in the most incredible information age right now, which is good and bad. I know, I could go off on a little tangent there, but at the end of the day, there's never been a time where we have more access to amazing information, podcasts and books on tape. And I mean, there's just so much information out there. Like whatever the thing you end up journaling on your paper, like you have an issue with anger, you go Google
anger management,
and
or like angry moms or whatever, and you are gonna you need find
to
yourself
start doing the work. And I mean, there's no shortcuts. I wish I could say there's some magical shortcut. There really isn't. It takes gut-wrenching humility and acknowledgement that I've got something to learn. I'm willing to kind of submit myself to the process of self-reflection and learning and growing, and it takes time, and we actually have to carve out the time and intentionality to do the work, but it's so worth it. I've chunked out years of my life. We're literally short of taking care of my children and just the sheer basics of life. I have chunked out at 2 different times in my life an entire calendar year where it was dedicated to this work, because I knew I needed the time. I needed the margin to do it. So that would be.
And I don't want to, both of us are in our 40s now, and we talk about this a lot. We don't want to lose any more time.
No.
We don't want to lose any more time to this garbage holding us back. We are gaining momentum now for the second half of our life, and we want to go really kind of balls to the wall with it, with all of the joy and purpose and direction that God has for us. And there is never a better time to start working on yourself and stepping freely into the future God has for you than today.
Amen.
Yeah.
Preach it, sister.
Okay, so my last question is a fun question, and I'm stealing it from Jen Hatmaker, because she asked everyone on the For the Love podcast when she's wrapping up with them, she says, what is saving your life right now? So in the tail end of, she just graduated a daughter from high school. We just went to her graduation party. She's got an up and coming senior. She's been doing a home build for about 1.5 years, right? Like we've been in this process for a while. She's currently living in her parents' house because her house sold.
No, I'm living in my parents' basement.
Yeah, with her kids, like
with
and the dog,
and a dog.
Yeah, because her house sold like we all prayed that it would just sell fast, and it sure did. Yep. So her whole life is in storage. So what
this is one of the 10 outfits that I currently have, and it's just on rotate.
What is saving your life right now?
Okay, one's naughty and one's good. Okay.
Well how naughty?
No, I'm kidding. I was going to say vodka and LaCroix.
Yeah, yes.
But since we're talking about chains, I swear I'm not an alcoholic. But no, there's it.
We all like a little sippy.
A little vodka and LaCroix.
What is my English grandma called it a titchy?
A titchy. Yeah.
We always like a little titchy, and there's nothing wrong with a titchy under control.
I know we've had some stressful days lately, and I'll tell you, it's just refreshing, or that glass of wine. But no, in all seriousness, in the same vein that my life has been bananas, and I'm a person who loves my little routines. I'm a very routine-driven person, so when my routines get shaken up, it's hard for me. And I normally like to spend all this time like reading every morning and journaling and the whole lovely process.
We're pretty obsessive about our morning routine.
And I have had no morning routine. And so the one thing that has been saving me lately is my worship music, because I haven't had time to read. I haven't had time to journal and do all the things that I normally do to kind of feel grounded in my day and connect with the Lord in the morning. And so I've been living in my car. And so I feel like that's been one really, it just fills me up. I can just put on the worship music for the 30 minutes that I'm driving out to the build site, and
it grounds you.
Oh, totally.
Centers
it just
you.
fills me up. I get out of my car, I'm filled with joy. I remember who God is. I remember who I am. And I don't know. So that has just saved me in light of not having time to read and journal and all the things that I would normally be doing, and then ending the day with that glass of wine.
Yeah, I think, it's all. I think you're starting it with the right priority. Okay, friends, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you love Angela at Boot and Borrow as much as I do, just stay tuned, because she's going to come. We have some plans in the works for for her to be on here more. And just hang on to your hat for just a minute, because she's going to be moving into her house soon, and then we are going to see all sorts of gorgeous content coming our way. And you can go follow her at Boot and Borrow, and then, which is Instagram, and Facebook is...
It's at Boot and Borrow in both places.
Yes, okay. So,
and bootandborrow.com.
Yes.
But I haven't posted since Christmas. But
there
is
is
some good stuff there.
Really
there's
good
some
content.
Old stuff there that's
There's
good.
some fantastic recipes, and then there's just some beautiful home decor. So be inspired, be uplifted, and give yourself that minute to think about what it would really mean for you to find freedom in some areas of your life that might be holding you back.
Yeah.
Have a great 4th of July, everyone.
Happy 4th, you guys.